Welcome back, everyone. This is where we left off in the previous lesson. We are able to fetch multiple documents in our collection. All right, so we talked about some of the most important and most impressive and amazing features of Firestore is its real-time updates. All right, so let's take a look at how we can add something called a snapshot listener to our app. And it's actually very simple. So what we have here is, let's go back to our single document. So we are going to take a look at how to add a listener to a single document. We have our document reference here, and instead of calling docref.getDocument like we did, we're gonna add a snapshot listener, okay? And it says here that this attaches a listener for document snapshot events. All right, so basically what this is doing is it is listening to this reference, this document, and anytime that there is a change to this document's data, whatever is inside of this function, the snapshot listener, will be run again. All right, so we have our snapshot block here. So I'm gonna press enter. And just like with the get document, we have a document snapshot. So I'm gonna call that snap and error. And then we have our code block here. Now, once we get inside here, this is actually the exact same as our get document. We're going to have some data. So I'm gonna say guard let data is equal to snap dot data else return. And from there, we can create a new category. So I'm going to say let new category equal category.init, and then pass in that data, which is a dictionary of type string and any. And then once we have that, we can say self.categories.append new category. And then we're going to want to reload our collection view data. Okay. So this is actually the same as we had here. I just wanted to rewrite it, give you some more practice with that. And I don't really like doing copy paste during tutorials. But yeah, so here we have our add snapshot listener. We are going through the same process, getting the data, creating a new category, and appending it. Now we are going to see something possibly unexpected here when we run this, but we'll come back to it. So I'm going to run this, and we should see a single category now. Make sure that you uncommented fetch document and commented out the fetch collection. So we see our single portrait category here. So now the cool thing, let's go into our console for our project. And I'm going to go ahead and kind of squish this so we can see our simulator here. Now, we've been talking about real-time updates. So what does that mean? We have our snapshot listener, so it is listening for any changes that occur in this particular document's data. So if I come over here and I click on name portraits and I change this data, we are going to be triggering a Firestore document event. So I'm going to say update, and watch over here in the simulator, update, and boom, we get a update for this data set, and now it says portraits, but we have two. So why is that? Let's come back here and take a look at our code. Like I said, whenever there is a change to this document's data, this block of code is going to be run again. When you have a snapshot listener, it runs once on initialization, and then it runs again on following events that trigger it. So what we're doing here is the first time it runs, we are adding our category to our categories array. When it runs again, we are adding another category to that array. So what we're going to need to do is we're going to say here, we're going to say categories dot remove all. Oh, and we need a self here. So each time that this runs, we're going to first remove any of the existing categories before we go through and create the new ones. All right, so I'm going to say run, and we have our single portraits category. So I'm going to come over here back into our console, and let's change that again. I'm going to change that back to just portrait, and boom, that just is changed right there. Very cool. Let's change maybe the image. So if we say portrait And let's grab this one here. I'm gonna right click and say copy image address, come back to our database, grab our image URL, paste that, and say update, and boom, there it goes. How cool is that? I just love the Firestore real-time updates. It allows you to do some really incredible and powerful things. All right, so let's head back into our code. Now, this isn't the best way to do this, removing all of the categories every time and then reinitializing the categories. In the next lesson, we're going to take a look at something called document changes, and we'll be able to do a little bit more of a more efficient method here. But for now, this is fine. All right, so we took a look at how to listen to snapshot, or I should say a document changes for an individual document. We can also do this for entire collections. So I'm going to comment out the fetch document code, uncomment the fetch collection code, and then down here in our fetch collection, we're going to do something similar. We're going to say collection reference dot, instead of get documents, we're going to say add snapshot listener. And we are going to press enter. From this, we get a snapshot query. We're going to say error. And this time, I'm just going to copy what we have here, paste it here, and then I'm going to comment out our previous get documents function. And then right here, we are going to remove our categories, our existing categories, categories.remove all. And let's try this out. I'm gonna save that and, gotta say self. Save that and run it. All right, so we have our 3 categories. Now let's come back into our console, and now we should be able to change any of these. Let's say nature, let's change that to maybe landscapes. Press update, and boom, that gets changed. Portrait, let's change that back to portraits. Yeah, that is looking really cool. Maybe for the aerial, we can change that to something like cityscapes. Yeah, and see how fast that is. I mean, it's almost immediate updates, which is just fantastic. So cool. All right, back into Xcode. Let's talk a little bit about this snapshot listener again. Now over here it says that there are some parameters and that there is a listener, the listener to attach, and that this returns a Fire listener registration that can be used to remove this listener, okay? So this is going to continue listening for document changes as long as this view controller is alive. So if you just kind of tap out of the app, go to a different app, this is still going to be listening, and it's going to continue receiving updates from the Firestore database. And so the reason that this is not ideal is you are billed by Firestore on the number of reads and writes. And so if you have an app that is just continuing to receive updates, you're wasting your quota. And so you want to remove the snapshot listener when you destroy your view controller. So we can do that by coming up here and creating a variable called listener, and that is going to be of type listener registration. And it says here that this represents a listener that can be removed by calling remove. All right, so we're gonna say exclamation point on that, and right down here in fetch collection, we will say a listener is equal to collection reference.add snapshot listener. So now we have this variable listener, and we could do the same thing for the individual document snapshot listener. And when we dismiss this view controller, so I'm going to come down here to view did appear. Below that, if we say view did disappear or view will disappear, then we can say listener dot remove. And now it will not continue to listen for updates, saving you on your data for your Firestore database. Now, if we come back to this view, we're going to want to put the listener back. So rather than have fetch collection and fetch document in view did load, you would probably want to have these in view will appear, because view did load is only called once upon initialization. View did appear is called every time the view is shown again. So I'm going to put those right here in view did appear. All right, very good. So let's just run that one more time, make sure everything is still working. And there we have it. Very, very cool. All right, so just to recap what we covered in this lesson, we talked about adding snapshot listeners for a single document and for collections. And what that does is it listens for changes in the data for either a single document or for any of the documents in a collection. And when that happens, we execute the code inside of this closure for every time that there is a change in that data. Now, we also talked about how you might not want to have that run all of the time whenever the view controller is alive, if you've exited the app, if you've gone to another app, in which case we can add a listener registration and remove that listener registration when that view controller is removed. All right, so super cool stuff with the real-time updates. Is my favorite feature of Firestore, and we'll keep talking about that in the next lesson, so I will see you there.